A crisis of faith, a look at the meta, and a quick look at every single team in the Overwatch League. Let's take a look at the league. Welcome to Overwatch, and welcome to another episode of Overwatch League coverage with a slight twist to it. So the first week of Overwatch League has finished, and there's a couple of things that I really wanted to sort of knuckle down and comment on after watching it all, or at least watching most of it. I still need to catch up on one or two games. Still need to watch what happened with Florida Mayhem and Boston Uprising. I'm actually really curious about that one, looking forward to watching it. Anyway, the first thing I really want to comment on is what I'm going to call the restoration of the faith. Like, it sounds like a weird thing to say, but for the last couple of weeks I've always had this sort of doubt that it's started creeping in more and more, which was that basically one of the main criticisms of Overwatch is that it's a very team-oriented game. It's very hard to carry individually in Overwatch. It's very difficult to sort of have a huge individual impact. You are very reliant on what the team does and how the team acts, and on ladder where everything is relatively sort of well match-made. Like, people give Blizzard matchmaking a lot of shit, but it really shouldn't have that much criticism, because if you play without it, if you play in like customs, if you play in just game modes where the matchmaking isn't as good, you'll notice that there is a very clear disparity of skill. And when that happens, you really do feel that, hey, I am either a lot better or a lot worse than these guys, and you start getting really stomped on. But when it comes to competitive, people are generally fairly evenly matched, and so what you end up with is these very sort of team-oriented games where it's just a matter of who can play better or who is playing better as an individual at that moment that really determines who wins or loses. But it does come down to that team aspect of the game. Now, what was concerning me was the individual ability to carry. Basically, the individual's ability to go and have a high impact on that game. It's part of why I wanted to go and learn Tracer, and part of why I'm still trying to learn Tracer, is because she is one of those heroes that can go and have that high individual impact where you don't have to rely on your team quite so much. It's very helpful when your team is playing well, of course, but you can go and do things more on your own and take more initiative, basically. As someone who's been a support main for a very long time, you got the feeling that you were so dependent on everyone else doing everything that it was like, what can I do? What can I do to improve my own rank in a meaningful way, aside from just get slightly better and then just like grind through the percentage numbers, you know, get a 51% win rate and then just grind. And what the Overwatch League has done is it's shown me that actually the way that I was thinking was flawed. Basically, this criticism of Overwatch usually comes from its detractors more than anything. They're usually very vocal. And I'm the kind of person that will take arguments on board no matter how asinine or stupid they seem. I'll just sort of keep them in the back of my mind and then try and look for evidence to support those thoughts. And what the Overwatch League has done is it's kind of smashed them. It's kind of smashed them into itty-bitty, teeny-weeny, itsy-bitsy little pieces, because you go and you watch like Pine, and you just see what he does in a team game and just destroys everyone, wins 3v1 fights. I think I'll probably have the NYXL versus Outlaws game. Like, Pine versus Linksa was one of the greatest like single matchups of skill that I've seen in a long time, and it was really goddamn fun to watch. And we sort of saw this throughout the Overwatch League, where we saw stuff like, you know, Carpe and Shadowburn just have an amazing showing. And it's not even just the DPS players, if you want to sort of highlight others. We saw Poco getting more value out of D.Va than I've seen in a long time. Spree, Zarya looked good. Fraggy's Reinhardt was devastating, which is what you'd expect out of Fraggy. Taimu's Roadhog as well, just to highlight more sort of pseudo-tank players. Just really doing a good job with it. Not just tanks either, supports as well. J. Jonak's legendary Zenyatta DPS. Boombox again and again, proving why he's such a clutch pickup on Fusion, because he just kept killing people and kept killing dives going for him. And of course, Toby's breathtakingly good Lucio play on Ilios. Like, there's so many good plays happening, there's so many good sort of highlight moments for each of these players that it's just like, okay, this is kind of restoring my faith in, hey, if I get really good at this game, I probably can start carrying matches. It's just dependent on me getting really good and sort of breaking out of the team restriction, I suppose, the team sort of level, and then just pushing. And that's important for people like me, and I think this is sort of what I want to sort of wrap the video around, which is that this is an important idea for people like me who do want to start pushing into and go towards the sort of the higher percentile player base and just sort of start showing the stuff, basically. I never really want to be the best. You know, being the best has never really been an interest of mine, but having mastery of something always was the more interesting aspect to me. Like, just being really good at something is satisfying in and of itself. I'm not the type A personality. I don't want to go in and smash everyone else, but what I do want to do is demonstrate that I probably know and play this better than you. And that's sort of what drives a lot of my desire to improve and my desire to get better. That's sort of what I found through introspection, is that I want to feel like I know this and I do this better than my opponents. And that's sort of where my satisfaction comes in. It's not necessarily beating them, it's being good at beating them. And that's where I get my pleasure. Now, of course, the Overwatch League is good for more than just restoring my faith. It's good for keeping an eye on the meta, and I saw an interview with Tavik that Overwatch Central did. It's on their channel. I recommend going and watching it. Tavik sort of really highlighted it nicely with the upcoming Mercy change, how that's going to impact the meta, because right now, it's still pretty similar to what we saw in preseason. A lot of Mercy, huge amount of Mercy, a lot of Widowmaker, a lot of Diva as well floating around. But Tavik really highlighted it nicely, which is how the Mercy meta and the Mercy changes will impact the Widowmaker meta, because what Mercy does at this point is she slows the game down. When you have Valkyrie, it's all about sort of baiting out the reses, baiting out the Valkyrie, forcing them to pop it first, and then sort of determining what you're going to be doing. Because going on that aggro dive just has so much little value when they can just pop an ultimate and get 2 reses off. So going for super aggressive plays suddenly is less good. So with the Mercy Widowmaker style, you can basically play a very, very slow play style. Just look for a couple of picks, force out reses, and then go and develop your play from there. Once the game is slowed down, Widowmaker is just a lot stronger. When the change comes in though, when Mercy can no longer get those reses off as easily, then suddenly having more opportunistic comps, going back more towards dive comp for example, so Philadelphia Fusion should be pretty happy, will probably be a lot stronger, and you'll probably expect to see more Zenyatta and probably see more Lucio as well. If we do end up going towards Zen Lucio, then we're going to see a lot less healing overall, and that could be interesting to see how that develops. Now, before everyone groans and goes, "Oh god, not dive meta again, oh no," just one or two things. During the Overwatch League, we did see that more heroes got played basically at a professional level than we've seen in a long time. It didn't really feel like there was just some singular, locked-in, standard mirror match comp that we constantly saw. There were, there were recurring themes. Divas, Winstons, Mercies, Zenyatas especially were popping up quite a lot. There were occasional, like, Moira, Lucio picks as well, and quad tank lineups and stuff like that popping up here and there. There were a couple of Doomfists thrown in, even a Sombra or two mixed into stuff outside of 2CP, which was interesting, to say the least. There was a Torbjorn as well, which is always interesting to see. No Symmetra at all. Not a single jot of Symmetra, and also no real Mei play. Like, we saw occasional Meis, we saw 1 or 2 stalling Meis, and then we saw mostly just Mei being used to lift people into places. She's sort of fitting her Mountaineer role, I suppose, of just helping people climb things. Aside from that, I'd say the big surprises coming from the Overwatch League were things like how good Valiant look. Like, Valiant were a team that I was always a bit excited about. Agilities has long been one of my favourite players, and seeing him come in and look really good doing it was pretty nice. Silk Thread's always been good, but Agilities has always been one of those players that I rate as a sort of a carry, and he's always had that ability to come in and just sort of take over a game. Same thing with Soon, of course, and Unko as well, just being really, really strong in the support role. They have a really good team lineup. I'm looking forward to seeing what Valiant can do in the long term. The other aspect was that how mortal some of these teams looked at times. I mean, Seoul just sort of seemed to bounce between mortality and immortality. Like, they occasionally looked vulnerable, and then they suddenly looked really, really good and unstoppable. And it was just kind of interesting to see how variable it was. Maybe it was just them taking it more seriously at points, I don't know. But it just felt like they were vulnerable, they can be beaten, they can be killed. Sorry, I've been playing a little bit of Darkest Dungeon. So, yeah. Same with Spitfire, just a little bit of a rough start, although judging from what Spitfire are doing, like they're mixing up the team roster, so you didn't see any of Rascal playing, for example, but you're seeing that Prophet Bird Ring sort of front line going in for more aggressive playstyles. Gesture is breathtakingly good, and I think he's going to be a real character for the league, so I'm looking forward to seeing Spitfire develop. Boston Uprising doing better than everyone expected, at least taking a series, which is always nice. I need to go and watch that one myself, but it looks like their team play is a little bit stronger. My issue with Boston Uprising is basically Boston Uprising, and I'm going to use a Dragon Ball analogy, I'm sorry. Boston Uprising could very easily turn out to be the Krillin of the league, in my mind, which is that they can train as hard as they like, but they're never going to be as good as some of the Saiyans. So yeah, it doesn't sort of matter how hard they train. It's like, you're not going to beat a team with just these legendary players on it. I don't think these players have that high potential. Some of them do, like, just not to sort of shit all over Boston from a great height. Mistakes, for example, Striker, I've heard good things about here and there. So sure, they could be good, but hey, I'm not holding my breath for them to be topping out the league by the end of the season. Dallas having a rough time. XQC in particular drawing a huge amount of flack from the community. I don't quite think it's deserved. I think XQC is doing what he can and just seems to be playing. He's not playing anything flashy. He's not like a carry. He's not going to just determine how the game pace works, but he's just a functional tank. Like, he's doing what he needs to do, and then when it goes wrong, he's of course going to be the first one to die, or he usually is the first one to die. And so it's like he's not making the big plays. His name's not lighting up the kill feed like some of the other players, like Taimu, like even Seagull occasionally, especially Effect could occasionally do. He's not going to be that big carry, that big sort of star player, but he's going to be consistent and good. Because I've run through one, let's run through them all just with like a very quick snippy analysis of each team. Let's see, Florida Mayhem, surprised more than anything. Again, I still need to go and watch Boston Uprising versus Florida Mayhem. I was expecting the Mayhem to take that game no problem, but it looks like they've probably been figured out slightly from their Spitfire match. They put up a good performance against Spitfire. Again, they have good players. Like, Tavik and Logix are pretty solid. My issue is that, like, occasionally you'll see weird things happening where Tavik and Logix are just completely overlapping their hero pools, and it's a bit strange. That's just due to that limited roster size. But they have talented players, they have experienced players. Maniton, of course, looking solid. Swoosh really seems to be sort of getting comfortable in that tank role, at least. And then Zebasai and Zuppe have been playing support for goddamn ages, so yeah, like they look good, but it's just, again, that sort of that limited size will limit the potential of the teams. I think they're trying to cover too many bases with too few people at this point. Houston Outlaws with a pretty solid performance, although I was disappointed to see Mendo Kasai not being played. A lot of people sort of focus a lot on Jake, but I really do want to focus on Lynx, well, three players I say in particular actually, which is Lynxer, Raucus, and Coolmat. Lynxer I think was actually the star player, I'm sorry. Jake looked okay playing Junkrat, but he's playing Junkrat. Like, he's going to explode things and do lots of damage. That's what Junkrat does. And he had a couple of good plays, but nothing sort of breathtaking. Lynxer, however, had a huge amount of pressure on him playing Widowmaker and McCree quite often, and just managed to take over the occasional game, managed to put up a good fight against people like Pine, and then just continually performed to a pretty solid level. Raucus continued to impress me. He basically was playing a huge flex role in the team. He played Bastion at times, he was playing Soldier at times, and he was playing a lot of the Zenyatta, and it looked really, really good. Raucus has continued to impress me, and I like what I see, basically. Last but not least, Coolmat continues to be the best diva probably in the league. Yeah, it's just really, really good. If you're looking for diva tips, just go and watch Houston Outlaws get played, and then just go and watch what Coolmat does and try and copy it. Trust me, it's worth it. Spitfire with a disappointing first performance against Mayhem. We were expecting a huge amount out of these teams. What I've been hearing is that they've been doing extremely well in scrims, but scrims are scrims, you know, it doesn't matter until you get out there. What we saw on the second day of play from them was a lot more like what we were expecting, just very, very consistent, very strong play, and it looked dominant, especially in the latter half of those games, and yeah, that's kind of what you want. Some of the issue I will put down to like, we've seen some close games, particularly on Junkertown. Koreans on Junkertown just look vulnerable. But what I would say about Junkertown, and, you know, refer to the previous video, is I don't think Junkertown still provides good, clear sort of separation between good teams and bad teams. It just feels like the attacking team has such a strong strategy available to them. If they can get it working, it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, and you end up in situations where you end up in that match with, like, you know, 8-6 or whatever the scoreline was by the end of it. It was ridiculous. Being honest, the biggest thing I can say about Spitfire is, again, I was disappointed not to see Rascal play. I liked seeing him Rascal play. LA Gladiators with a couple of good performances. Again, LA Gladiators is one of those teams that will sort of just continue to roll out, and to me they are the definition of a middle-of-the-pack team. They have sort of these relatively middle-of-the-pack players. They're good, but they're probably not some of the greats in the roles. And yeah, the one thing I was disappointed not that I didn't get to see much of, which is Hydration's Pharah. Hydration has an extremely strong Pharah, and I would have liked to have seen more of that, but I think, you know, they just haven't had a chance to roll that out. They had a couple of easy matches to start off with Shanghai Dragons. No surprise to see them do extremely well there. But yeah, this is a team roster that it seems good, but, well, they basically went to polar opposites, right? Because they had Shanghai Dragons and they had Seoul Dynasty, and it's like, what do you do? What do you do? So yeah, like, feels bad, man, for those guys. Looking forward to seeing how they play in the coming days, though, because, hey, they'll have less swingy matchups. NYXL, the question everyone's lips about NYXL is, why aren't they playing Pine more? He just seems to kill everybody and not give a shit. Yeah. Why aren't they playing Pine more? I don't understand. Maybe it's a communication thing, maybe they're trying to train up other players, but NYXL are definitely one of the teams to beat in my mind, and when they're on form, oh my god, is it disgusting. Sabiobi is also like one of my favourite tracers to watch, so it's like, this is a good team. This is a very, very good team that has pretty much limitless potential. They just need to sort of knuckle it down and get it working. I think Fusion were one of the big stories of the week, much like Valiant as well. They just had a performance well above what people were expecting and definitely put themselves sort of out there a little bit more. Sure, they had a rough time against Spitfire, but most teams are going to have a rough time against Spitfire. Philadelphia Fusion, though, came out with a really powerful dive style, really sort of playing to Carpe and Shadowburn's strengths. It looks like they got that working quite nicely, and when that starts happening, when they start sort of getting that ball rolling, that'll be good. They've been sort of one of the teams slowest to get into training because of visa issues and stuff like that, so hopefully we see that team develop, because they could, especially if the meta does swing back more towards dive, Philadelphia Fusion could be one of the teams threatening that tier 1 slot. Again, San Francisco Shock really not sort of breaking out, I suppose, not blowing anyone's socks off. Doesn't really surprise me too much. This is kind of what people were expecting from them, which is that they're just sort of, they're there, and it's not like nothing really blew my socks off. I don't know. Like, you can't really read too much into games against the Shanghai Dragons. Sorry, Shanghai Dragons fans, all 6 of you in the Western world, I suppose. But yeah, you can't read too much into that. Like, it's just, like, we'll wait to see how they shake out. I would like to see them play, for example, San Francisco Shock versus LA Gladiators. You know, to me, like, these teams are sort of the middle of the pack towards the lower end of the pack. San Francisco Shock certainly more than LA Gladiators, what I'd say. And so, yeah, just kind of they turned up. I don't know. Compared to everyone else, they just didn't seem to have much to do. Now, the breakout story of the preseason, but that hasn't really translated into week number 1, and so, yeah. Seoul Dynasty, on the other hand, well, they kind of did what everyone expected, right? Veni Vidi Vici, they came, they saw, they conquered. And yeah, that's kind of what people were hoping for. Players to watch, just pick a name, basically. If you really want to watch players, like, I highlighted Cool Matt earlier to be one of the best divas in the world. Zumba is probably one of the people who could take or wrestle that title away as well. Zumba's diva was extremely good. I'll also highlight Envy, which is Valiant as well. Envy was doing extremely well on the diva, so like, if you want 3 diva players, those would be it. Zumba, Envy, and Cool Matt. And like, Envy's definitely stepped up, but yeah, Zumba and Cool Matt were already there, and oh my god. Oh my god. But just pick a name in that team lineup, and if you play any of the heroes that those guys play, just watch what they do, because oh baby, they are good. They are very, very good. Pretty much what people are expecting from them. They had a close series against Dallas, which was a little bit surprising. Might have just been nerves, might have been warm-up, might be still shaking out 1 or 2 things on the stage, but hey, I think that as the season goes on, these guys are just going to get better and better and better and better, and just going to turn into an unstoppable force, except for the other Korean teams. That being said, Seoul Dynasty versus Valiant could be a good game. And Shanghai Dragons showed up, I guess. I'm being mean. I am being mean. Players to watch from Shanghai Dragons that I saw, Dia in general in the preseason had a really good performance, but other than that, they are currently just getting bullied around more than anything. It's a bit of a shame, but here's hoping that maybe it'll change. So with Shanghai Dragons, my mindset is that this roster is like the first iteration roster. I think this roster got locked in very, very early on, if I remember right, and so it was sort of the first team that got announced as well. They have all of China to draw from. China's a big country with a lot of people in it, so here's hoping that they can find a team that will measure up more to what the other teams are doing, because as it is now, this team just doesn't seem to be on that same level. And I imagine that people are going to see matches against Shanghai Dragons and go, oh, well, not even going to bother tuning into that one, because it's probably going to be a 4-0. We will see. We will see. Otherwise, guys, thank you for watching to the end of the video. I've been Josh's One Voice Amongst Many. As usual, you can find me on Twitch more often than not at 10 o'clock British time between Thursdays and Mondays. I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for watching to the end once more. I'll see you all next time. Toodles.